Example 6 says use a graphing utility to graph x cubed minus 3x plus 2 on the interval of -2 to 2. And then we want to do two things. Then we're going to approximate any local max and mins and determine where the function is increasing or decreasing. So for this video, the graphing utility that we're going to use is Desmos. If you have a graphing calculator, there is another video that is made using a graphing calculator in case you want to use that instead of Desmos. And it is going to tell us on this interval of -2 to 2. And so this will represent our x min and our x max there. So we'll need that as well. Okay, so let's get into our internet here, and we're going to go to Desmos. Now, when I type mine in, it just automatically, and I'll just show again real quick. When I type in Desmos, it automatically does desmos.com/calculator. That is what we want. In case you go to Desmos and you see this page here, we want to just click right here, open graphing calculator, and here we are. So this is kind of our starting point, okay? And let me go ahead and split screen here. So now I'm going to type in this equation. I'm going to type it in exactly the way it looks. So x, and then to get cubed on my keypad here, or on my keyboard, I'm going to hit Shift-6 for this caret key, which looks like an arrow. So Shift-6, that makes me go up into that exponent, and then I can keep typing the rest, minus 3x plus 2. Okay, so here is my graph right here. Now, this does ask me for local max and mins, and I can clearly see that on this window. This window is too big though, because I only want it from -2 to 2. And you can see here in Desmos, I'll just go ahead and slide this over. We're going from -10 to +10. So my window's a little too big, but we do need to kind of finesse this a little bit. So to approximate my local max and mins here, if I click anywhere on this graph, I've got some points that are going to kind of gray for me here. And these are your most important points. And what they kind of put as points are going to be intersections, X and Y intercepts, and then max and mins. So this is not a max or a min. This is my Y intercept. So I don't need that point. And I don't need this point here because that is my X axis right there. But this one is my maximum. And this one right here is my minimum. So here is my graph. So for part A, I will say the local max equals 4. Remember, these always equal the Y value. And then a lot of times it's going to want to talk about X as well. And so we'll say when X equals -1. So those are my ordered pairs here. It's that -1, 4. And the local min equals, here's my min, so again, that Y value, that equals 0 when X equals, this time when my X is of a value of 1. Okay. So that's part A, approximating local max and mins there. Now, the next thing we want to determine is where the function is increasing and decreasing. Now, I'm a visual person, so I'm actually going to kind of graph this right here. And because I now know my max and my min of 0 and 4, that's going to help me with my, my graph a little bit more. So where that local max is, that's going to be my Y max. And where my local min is then my Y min. So I want to change this graph. So to change my viewing window of this graph, I'm going to go to this graphing settings tool right here. And they told me what the X max and min would be. So I'm going to go -2 to 2. And then because I know my Y max and min, I'm going to change that as well. So I'm going to go Y min. I'm going to go a little bit lower, so maybe -1. And then I'll go a little bit higher of 5. Okay, so here's my graph. Now, because I am a visual person, I'm going to go ahead and just make a rough sketch of this on my paper here. And there we go. Okay, so here is my X and Y axis. Now, my math lab is going to be picky on this. I'm not going to be as picky, but because the interval is from -2 to 2, it's not going to have arrows. This is starting at -2 and ending right here at +2. And if I kind of graph my sketch right here, here, so it's going to do something of that nature right here. And then we found my max right here to be at -1, 4. And we found our min down here to be at 1, 0. So there's kind of my sketch of that graph that I got on Desmos. Now, again, if you don't need to draw this sketch and you can do it directly from your Desmos graphs, this isn't necessary. But for my more visual learners, which includes myself, I'm going to draw this sketch. Because now we need to determine where this function is increasing and decreasing. And once I have my max and my min, I have those answers there. So if we start with increasing, I have 2 intervals of increasing. So first, it is increasing right here, and then it is increasing again right here. Okay. And I'll just kind of underline that. Those are my increasing intervals. Now, typically, we'll say -infinity to that -1, but because we have this interval here, I need to start at -2 and go to -1. And this one here, then, when we're talking about intervals of increasing and decreasing, we're looking at the X, right? Max and min focuses on the Y, but increasing and decreasing is about your X's. So it's increasing from +1 to, again, we usually say infinity, but they're wanting us to stop on this interval right here of 2. So 1 to 2. Okay, so then that leaves decreasing. And we'll do that in green here. So where is this graph going down as you move left to right? And that would be right there. It is going down. So where is that interval? Looking at, again, focusing on that X is -1 to 1. Okay, now I do kind of have a note here. I'm going to write this one on the sticky here. I made an emphasis last video talking about when we're talking about increasing and decreasing, that these always have parentheses, because I can't really say, I mean, I do know what happens past this -1. It's still decreasing, right? But on these endpoints, I'm not really going to say what's happening, increasing or decreasing. I can't really put it in one bucket or the other. Same with my max and my mins, right? So because it's not actually including that number, I don't want to ever put that in brackets. It's always going to be parentheses when we're talking about increasing and decreasing. However, we're going to make a little note that your homework, that my math lab uses brackets here. And I don't like that because it is not technically right. but they will use those brackets on those endpoints. So they'll put a bracket here and a bracket here. So I don't know why they do that, but we're always going to use parentheses, but no, when you get to problems like this that tell you to use that graphing utility, that you are going to use brackets on those endpoints there, okay? All right, I want you guys to pause this video and try example 7 on your own. And then once you have your max, min, and your intervals of increasing and decreasing, then you can play the video. All right, hopefully you have paused the video and you have attempted example 7 on your own. Example 7 is the exact same thing. Use a graphing utility, which will be Desmos, to graph this function here and still in this interval of -2 to 2. So first things, we're going to change our equation. And this is the equation we get here. So it hasn't changed that viewing window. So you can see that we do need to zoom out, right? We are too zoomed in, too close to this function. So you can either use this minus key right here, just use your mouse, whatever you want to do. But if you zoom out and you kind of grab it and pull, you can find that max and min, right? So again, click anywhere on this graph. Here is my max because this is where it changes from increasing to decreasing. It hits a tipping point. And then here it goes from decreasing to increasing. So that right there is my minimal. That's the lowest part of that little valley part right there, right? Okay, so once I get that max and that min, which is my Y values, now I can go in and change my viewing window. So I'm going to change my X back to -2 to 2 because that's what the interval is telling me here on my X values. Okay, and then that max is 11.5-ish. So I'm going to go just a little bit above it. I'm going to go a max of maybe 13. And then my min is -1.5. So I'm going to go just barely below that and maybe go -3. So this is going to be kind of my graph right here. Still showing that max and that min. Okay, so that answers part A. We have the local max is 11.53 when X is -0.82. It didn't tell you how to round here, so just round however you want. I went to 2 decimals, but if you did 1 decimal, probably not whole numbers, but if you did 1 decimal or 3 decimals, that's fine. I will be picky on rounding when I specifically say round to 2 decimals and you give me more or less. Okay, but if it doesn't say, just round it. My math lab will always tell you. And the, excuse me, and then the local min is at -1.53, because that's your Y, when X is 0.82. So you can kind of see, my camera's messing up a little bit, but there we go. So I kind of roughly sketched that. If you don't need it, again, if you can just use this Desmos graph, then by all means do so. But the next part is, where is it increasing or decreasing? Really, I already said that when I was describing how I knew that this was a max and a min. How do I know this is a max? Because it's changing from increasing to decreasing. Why is this a min? Because it's changing from decreasing to increasing. So my increasing intervals is -2 to -0.82, and then 0.82 to 2. So there is my increasing. So then decreasing is everything but low or between that. Starts here and it's coming down. And so my decreasing interval is from -0.82 to 0.82. Max and min, focus on the Y coordinates. Increasing and decreasing, focus on those X coordinates. Okay, and then on your test and stuff, this is what I'm looking for. But on my math lab, on this problem specifically, it does use brackets. So what is it going to use brackets on? It's going to use brackets on those endpoints right there. So it will have a bracket, -2 and 2 bracket right there. So If that went too fast, I would suggest rewinding the video and rewatching example 6. But that's kind of what I've got about finding max and mins using Desmos, as well as your increasing and decreasing intervals.